The following program is a PodcastOne.com production.
From Hollywood, California, by way of the Broken Skull Ranch, this is the Steve Austin Show.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Now, here's Steve Austin.
All right, everybody, welcome to Steve Austin Show. I am coming to you from the back of my RV. I'm on the outskirts of Los Angeles, California today, working on a project that I'll be telling you about in the near future. Just can't say much about it right now. Yesterday, I left my house in the RV, came on to the outskirts of Los Angeles, checked into a hotel room, and sat down with my laptop computer and answered the questions that you guys sent in to questions@steveaustinshow.com and my Twitter account. So today's podcast, I'm going to be doing a Q&A with you guys. And I tell you what, I appreciate everybody sending in their questions. I got through about a half of them or maybe even a third of them. And I appreciate y'all sending them in. The ones that I did not get to, I'm going to get to at a later date because I always enjoy just kind of, as much as I enjoy talking to people at 317 Gimmick Street, sometimes I just enjoy doing the podcast by myself and answering questions and shooting the shit or whatever. So if you've got any subject matter topics, people you want me to interview, please send me an email to questions@steveaustinshow.com and give me your suggestions. Hot damn, I tell you what, it's been a few weeks since WrestleMania 34, and I'm just about to get over this damn bug. I feel 100%, but my voice ain't all the way there yet, so please bear with me. I've been using my voice all morning so far, and I got a few more hours and another day of filming to do, but it's holding up so far. I tell you what, we just came back from Nevada the other day, and we were kind of trying to get over there for an extended vacation to kind of let our hair down and get out of the ambulances and the hustle and bustle of Los Angeles. And this project got jumped up a little sooner than I thought it was going to happen, and we had to haul ass and come back and leave Nevada in the mountains and fly back into Los Angeles. And I tell you what, man, the more I'm in Los Angeles, the more I'm ready to get out. And Los Angeles is a great town, ain't no doubt about it. There's some good shit going on over here. Best weather in the world as far as I'm concerned. But when you get out there in the big country, Nevada, and that clear air, beautiful mountains, and just all the sights and scenes and places to ride is the thing I like about it the most. I got thousands and hundreds of thousands of acres to ride, and I've been trying to maximize that as much as possible. But I just seems like I always run out of time and have to come back to L.A. to get back to work. But I'm looking forward to going back to Nevada. I think we're heading back, or I'm going to head back in a couple of days. Once I finish this project, I got to get out of Los Angeles for just a little bit longer and finish off that vacation and get a little bit more downtime. But today's podcast is going to be Q&A, answering the questions you guys sent in. Like I said, the ones that I haven't gotten to yet, I will get to and get those answered for you. And I'll tell you what, I could sit here and flap my gums all day long in the back of my camper, but the truth is I'm about to be off of my lunch break and have to get back to work, so I'm going to open this podcast short, to the point.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
All right, everybody, I'm sitting here in my hotel room. I got my laptop computer on the desk in front of me. I'm going to take some questions off my email, and I saved some screen captures from Twitter. You guys sent in questions that were all over the charts. Of course you did, because I didn't ask specifically to ask questions about a certain subject. So the questions are all over the place. There's many about professional wrestling. So I'm going to start with a few of those, and then we'll segue into some other ones and get back into more wrestling. That is the world I come from, and that's the world that I like to talk about. So as I said here, my refrigerator in the room is about 10 yards away, and it's humming like a bastard. So if you can hear it humming, I apologize. At least I'm not at 317 Gimmick Street, where you're listening to motorcycles, helicopters, ambulances, and that sorry-ass little dog that barks his fool head off next door. But anyway, I've got a busy day for the next few days working on a project out here. So let's get to these questions so I can do some homework and be prepared for tomorrow's task at hand. First question comes from a dude called Gunga Den on Twitter, and it says, "Hey Steve, while it's safe to assume one loses wrestling skills when not being in the ring for a while, do promo skills erode in the same way? Could you step right back in the ring tomorrow and cut a killer promo?" Man, the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it, is absolutely true. When you get out of the ring and you try to make a return, it takes you a while to get your gears back. It takes you a while to get your timing back. It takes you a while to get your wind back. And it took me a long time when I first came back from an injury. When I started with the WWF, I'd been healing from that tricep injury, and I was working with Savio Vega every night, and he was whipping my ass as far as being in cardio shape. I loved working with Savio, but yeah, man, I lost a lot of that ring rust real quick working with Savio. Same thing happens on a promo, man. If you're not talking on the damn mic all the time as much as you can, you know, the more you do something, the better you become at it. I think a case in point is Elias. I believe he's able to kind of do what he does almost every single house show. Go out there with his guitar, has that mic, and he's able to entertain that crowd and cut a promo. Basically ad-lib it, do whatever he wants to. And I think that spurs his creative juices. And if you took that away from him for a while and then put him back out there, the dude's a good talker to begin with, so let's face that. But if you took that away from him for a while, then had him go back out there, you know, he'd probably flounder just a little bit and take a while to get back in his groove. And as far as I go, you know, when I went back to Raw 25 at the Barclays Center there in Brooklyn, you know, I didn't cut a promo in the ring. I went out there and I stunned Shane and I stunned Vince, and I went back. And when I was in the back, I said, hey, man, let's go over here and do an interview for the WWE Network, if you don't mind. I said, yeah, man, let's go. And I was jacked up, man. I had so much adrenaline in me from that crowd hitting as hard as they did, and I was just flying high. And I'm not talking about being high. I'm talking about flying high from adrenaline. All of a sudden, the dude asked me a question, and it was a one-question promo. And I said, no, dude, you ain't going to cut me off like that. And that's when the whole thing was an ad-lib, but that's when I really started going into overdrive, when he only asked me one question. Shit, I flew all the way across the United States, and dude's going to ask me one question. So that was one of those cases of, I dropped a pretty damn good promo that night. Could it have been better? Yeah, if I'd been, you got to understand, hell, that's the first promo I cut in since 2003, for all practical purposes. So I was able to do it, obviously. But man, when you're rolling every single week, when you're out there talking, thinking, living, eating, sleeping, and crapping the business and engaged in it, I watch from afar these days, so I'm still highly interested in it. But dude, to answer your question, yeah, man, can I cut a promo effectively? Yeah, but could I cut a better promo if I was in there every single week? Absolutely, I believe that 100%. Next question comes from Top Jobber Jones on Twitter. He says, Steve, do you think that the WWE is making Braun Strowman too human? I want to see him as a 6'8", ass-kicking machine. Seems like there is too much ha-ha and gaga. Well, you know, I want to see, what they call him, the monster among men. That's what I want to see out of Braun Strowman. A couple of weeks ago at that pay-per-view, when he picked out that kid to be his tag partner, man, if you're the kid, Nicholas, man, props to you. That was probably, like, no pun intended, being a kid in a candy store, one of the greatest days of your life. Being able to go out there in a WWE 20x20 ring with a WWE superstar of the magnitude of Braun Strowman and go out there and let him, or be right there, front row on the apron while he's out there taking care of business. That must have been a blast. But I'm kind of with you, man. I want to see Braun Strowman in serious mode. And you want to have moments of levity or moments of character development and advancement and in pushing the creative envelope in certain aspects. But yeah, man, I knew when I talked to Braun Strowman on my podcast several months ago, a couple of years ago, I just liked what I saw in the kid. I knew that he had the gift of gab. He's a very interesting person. He's very articulate. He's very eloquent. He's very well spoken. Yeah, he's a big-ass, strong man from Kentucky, wherever the hell he's from. But, yeah, I want to see him in situations of impending danger. I want to see him in situations of, that's with respect to the wrestling business. I want to see him, with title shots on the line, stuff like that. I want to see him respond to the things that they're going to throw at him from a creative standpoint. More so than being, a comedy guy or I don't need Braun Strowman at 6'8", 370 pounds to make me laugh. I like for him to make me say, holy shit, I can't believe that guy just did that. So I'm kind of on the same page as you with that. And that being said, when I broke those 3 bones in my lower back when I was a heel. That's when I started doing all the comedy stuff, because I figured I'd better entertain people. If I can't get heat because I can't work with these 3 broke bones in my back, I need to do something. So there was a reason for what I did. And I think probably the creative team is trying to think, okay, what can we do to expand Braun Strowman's fan base? Because the way I looked at it back in the day, and still to this day, if you make your fingers into a circle, like I have right here, that represents a piece of the pie, and that's the be like a pie there, and you look at what percentage, of that crowd do you have? I mean, you have your young kids, you have your women, your younger males, your middle-aged males, your older females. I look at all those different slices of the pie as a demographic and see which, each section that you can capture. So you want to capture that entire universe. So maybe they're trying to, present some versatility to him so that he appeals to different people. But to me, I think his greatest appeal is the fact that he is the monster among men, and you need to focus on that. And dude, it's like Andre the Giant. Andre was Andre. He wasn't out there doing drop kicks. He wasn't out there, he was light up an arena with his smile, with his magnetic presence. He was the 8th wonder of the world. But he wasn't doing a bunch of comedy stuff. So, Braun has got wonderful athletic ability for a guy his size. So I think with him, man, stick with the money. Stick with physicality, stick with fear, stick with strength, and stick with him being a dominating force. I don't need him to entertain me and make me laugh. I want him to make me go, holy shit, I can't believe that guy just did that. Yeah, get these hands. That's what I think about that. Here's a question from J.R. White. He said, Steve, when you wrestled back in the day, did your parents ever come to your matches to see you perform? If so, how did that feel? Dude, I think my mom and dad might have came to 1 or 2 of my matches in my entire career. And not because they didn't support me. They absolutely love me, and they're the greatest parents in the world. But wrestling just really wasn't their thing. And my younger brother, Kevin, when I first got into business, he came to the Dallas Sportatorium. He came over to Tyler to the Oil Palace. He came to Beaumont. Everywhere where he could get to, man. If we were in Texas, my brother was there. I'll never forget, we were working at the Houston Summit, and that's the place where Joel Osteen preaches out of these days. But back then, Houston Summit seated about 18,000 people. And my mom and dad came to Houston to watch me wrestle that night, and we were sold out. We were sold out damn near. Well, not damn near. We were sold out every single night of the week that we worked. And Houston, Texas was no different. And that was basically my stomping grounds. It's exactly 100-mile drive from Edna, Texas to Houston, Texas. My mom and dad went to that show, and I was working on top that night with the one and only Mick Foley. Turns out I had a staph infection. I got really, really sick. And I went directly, after finishing the hospital, to the Houston Hospital, Herman Hospital, and I remained there for 3 or 4 days, fighting that staph infection in my elbow, and went the next weekend, well, that Sunday, to wherever we did that first blood match, where I had with Kane, as a matter of fact, me and Kane in the first blood match, and we were the main event. And the match that was before us was the actual main event as far as the attraction and as far as the way these guys nailed it. That was the famous Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker and Mick Foley. And holy smokes, what a match to try to follow. You can't follow a match like that. Both guys were on fire in the business. They just told a hell of a story. The carnage was devastating. Anyway, long story short, to go back to answer your question, that was really the one time. I think they might have came to, no, I don't think they ever came to Austin. But I just remember going to Houston. My mom was concerned because I was going to the hospital. But I had the greatest parents in the world, and they always supported every single thing I did in my life, but especially in my sporting career and in my business life. So but that wrestling just wasn't their thing. And it meant a lot to me that they went to Houston that night.
This is Adam Carolla from The Adam Carolla Show. If you care about sports, you care about moments. And right now, they're everywhere. March Madness is tightening. And the road to the 2026 World Cup, soccer is heating up. From the Sweet 16 to international test matches, BetOnline is built for fans who don't just watch, they track, study, and stay ahead. College hoops is down to the best of the best. Tighter games, sharper lines, and props that actually matter. At the same time, international football is building toward the biggest tournament in the world. BetOnline delivers it all. Live betting, instant updates, and in-game odds that move with every possession on the court and every attack on the pitch. The $50,000 Sweet 16 bracket contest is live, a fresh chance to get in, build it right, and take your shot while the road to 2026 continues to unfold. Big moments, don't wait. BetOnline. The game starts here.
Here's another question from Brian. He said, "Hey, Steve, your bald head and goatee gave you the perfect look for the Stone Cold character. Do you think if you still had your hair and appearance from the early 90s, let's say Dangerous Alliance, Hollywood Blondes days, that the character would still have worked?" Hell no. I tell you what, man, back in the day when you got into business of pro wrestling, I broke in 1990, I was the Rookie of the Year. Well, back in the day, you always thought that, all the wrestlers had mullets. They all had long hair. That was the thing. You had to have long hair if you was going to be a pro wrestler. I thought the same damn thing. And, I remember going through the phases, the different haircuts in WCW. I go back, I still look at my Twitter account these days, and I'll see these people, they'll send me pictures of my Stunning Steve days with, Colonel Parker or these other different incarnations of hairstyles that I was going through. And, I looked like shit. I had beautiful hair back in the day, but I started losing it about the age of 23, 24. Fast forward all those years, came in as a ringmaster, and I did that buzz cut, and that was inspired by, the Pulp Fiction movie, Bruce Willis's character. And, that one night, and I've told this story many times, but we were working Pittsburgh, Mellon Arena, and I was traveling with Dustin Rhodes, Gold Dust. And I said, man, F it. I'm going to shave all this shit off. Can't see it anyway. And, grew into goatee, came up with the Stone Cold gimmick. And that's when all the pieces started falling into place. That's when I got some direction. And I had just seen a light at the end of the tunnel when I worked in ECW for just a couple of months, working with Paulie Dangerously, watching all those badass talents that ECW had, cutting all those unbelievable promos, multi-layered, character-driven promos that were off the charts, super strong. And I got a chance to unleash and uncork one promo at 4:30 in the morning. It kind of gave me a little bit of direction, but I absolutely believe that, my hair was supposed to leave for a reason. And if I'd never started getting, like the widow's peaks or the bald peaks, whatever you call them, I probably would never cut my hair off because, hell, as a guy, you think you're supposed to have hair and it's attractive. Turns out losing my hair was the best thing that ever happened to me. Stone Cold Steve Austin would not have been Stone Cold Steve Austin had that hair remained. Bald head plus Stone Cold, great gimmick, hard work, great storylines, great creative, great opponents equals money. And that's the bottom line. Jesse Bates on Twitter says, "Hey, Steve, did you speak with Shawn after winning the title at WrestleMania 14? And was there any heat between you guys after he showed up to the press conference afterwards?" You know what? It's the thing in the wrestling business, and I learned this after I got into business. I didn't know before I got into the business, but, proper etiquette is when you work a match with somebody, whether you're working heel, baby, doesn't matter, new to the territory, been around, you always thank the guy you worked with. That's just what you do. Whether you knocked it out of the park or whether you shit the bed, you always go thank the person that you worked with. So there was a lot of And there was just a lot of animosity. Not animosity between me and Shawn. Me and Shawn were always cool. He just wasn't in a good place. And we didn't know if he was going to get in the ring. And there's all the stories about Undertaker taping up his hands and stuff like that. And, Shawn was, late to a few things. But there was never any heat between me and Shawn. Man, as long as I've known Shawn, we've never had heat. He was just in a bad place at that time in his life. Had a bad back, and he wasn't real excited about dropping the title, but he certainly did, and he was a complete pro about it. But I do not remember getting a chance to shake his hand or talk about the match, because I'd worked with Shawn many times at house shows before that, and we had absolutely just ripped the roof off of buildings, just having these matches, just calling them on the spot, calling them on the fly. Shawn was always cool with me calling the matches because 90% of the time he was calling his own matches, because that's how Shawn worked. And, I was used to calling my matches, so he was like, dude, if you want to call a match, it gives him a night off. You're talking about probably hands down the best worker in the history of the business. And so when he's going to let you call a match so he can kind of take the night off and just do his part, he was down for it. But I don't remember shaking his hands after that match. And then I remember they were showing an interview segment on the WWE Network a while back. When I did go through the curtain after that match and I saw Vince, that night on that interview, I said, man, that match sucked. I was paraphrasing. When I saw Vince backstage, I actually told him verbatim, I said, man, that wasn't so great. On the WWE Network interview, I said that sucked. Well, it was a little harsh. I said, man, that wasn't so great. End result basically is the same. But that's when Vince told me, hey, man, it all starts tomorrow. And it did. But never any heat. But that's what you do. You shake people's hands after you, and you're trusting this person, with your life, basically. Anyway, he shows up at the press conference, and, that was, for me and Mike Tyson and I guess Vince or whoever it was to answer questions. And Shawn left, but Shawn was totally cool after that. And Shawn is actually one of the people I probably keep in contact with the most. I mean, we don't call each other every day. I'll call him about every 3-4 months, just ask him, what's going on? How's the ranch doing? Or are you able to get out and enjoy the woods anymore? I know he's working down there in Orlando at the Performance Center, and he's doing really well and he's really happy. So, but I keep in contact, or regular contact, just shooting him a call to shoot the breeze with him. One of the guys that he's one of my all-time favorites, and I really think from bell to bell, Shawn Michaels was probably the best to ever do it in the business of professional wrestling. That's my opinion. When it comes to well-rounded athletic storytelling, psychology, everything, performance, Shawn's the guy. Sad Sack says, Steve, have you seen Bigfoot, or do you believe in them? Yeah, I had a couple of damn margaritas with Bigfoot outside the Broken Skull Ranch 2.0 in Nevada the other day. He got shit-faced, stumbled back to the mountains. I went into my bed and went to sleep. Joshua Roberts says, Steve, opinion on the Titus trip probably being the greatest thing in pro wrestling. And there's another Twitter question here talking about Titus. Let me see if I can find that right now. I got a chance to see part of the greatest Royal Rumble. Here's one more tweet from Brian Morse. Did you see the Titus O'Neal fall at the greatest Royal Rumble? And have you ever seen anything like it? What would Stone Cold say to Titus when he came back to the dressing room if you were there? Well, I'll tell you what. I did see it. Titus O'Neal came down there and, man, he tripped. He caught that little edge from the foam padding right there that's surrounding the ring and just totally ate it, and he slid underneath that ring. And I tell you what, he actually got lucky that he tripped when he did and went underneath the ring, because had he tripped about a foot or two further down the road, he probably would have went head first right into that apron. And that is steel structure and 2x12s and all kinds of shit right there. So, first of all, he could have got hurt by anything underneath the ring as well. He got so lucky that he didn't get hurt. It's unbelievable. And They replayed it a million times, and I popped because, you just pop on things like that when you see that the guys are okay. But I tell you what, man, I've done the same thing. I've never tripped on that kind of entrance, but I've stumbled getting through the ropes. I've tripped getting in the ropes as Stone Cold Steve Austin, the hottest thing on 2 feet in the wrestling business. That one time, we was in Minnesota. Jesse the Body Ventura, special guest referee, Shane McMahon around the ring, a triple threat match between myself, Triple H, and Mankind. And Shane was out there messing around. I was standing on the bottom rope. I took a swipe at him, ended up ass over tea kettle, tied up in the ropes, upside down in front of 18,000 people on live pay-per-view. And I'm sitting there yelling, Jesse, Jesse, trying to get him to help me because I'm stuck. No one will help me. Paul, Triple H, he's the heel. I'm the babyface. He's got no reason to help me from a logic standpoint because, why would you help out your babyface? But from a business standpoint, he knows he needs me in a match so we can continue. So he comes over there and straightens me up, and, we're laughing our ass off. You can't see it during the pay-per-view, but, I wouldn't say I felt bad for Titus. I mean, those things happen. I wish it wouldn't have happened. I'm sure he doesn't either, but I'm sure he's laughed it off. And I wouldn't say anything to him. Dude, Titus has been around for a long time, and he was like a hell of a former college football player. So, that's one of those things where you just say, shit happens. You get a laugh about it, and then you go on down the road. Hell, I've shit my pants in the ring before, or shit my trunks. So I've done worse things than tripping on the way to the ring. But as a man, or like Titus is pretty much a badass. So, like when you're a badass, just like Stone Cold, when you come down there and trip, you do have that egg on your face. So you just got to laugh it off, act like it never happened, and just conduct business. And that's what Titus did. So that's all I would say. I got a kick out of it just from I felt for him because I've been there. And that's the last thing that you want to do, dude. Whether you're a heel or a baby, you don't want to do anything like that. And as a heel, it's probably easiest to get along, to get away with. But nonetheless, you never want that to happen. But he's going to be just fine. Titus is a real good dude, and he's got a great head on his shoulders. So I know he's laughing it off now. Anyway, next question comes from Milton. As you know, recently the WWE Superstars did a long journey to Saudi Arabia. Do you recall any long journeys traveling the world with WWE? And did you do anything to pass the time? Milton Gaffer from Newcastle, England. I got a lot of people from England listening to this show, and I appreciate it very much, all the way across the pond. Man, I tell you what, it depends on what you're talking. You got to be talking about flying. When we were flying back in the day, we went to South Africa, we went to England, Germany, all those places. And now they're going way more places than we went back in the day. Going to Australia, what we did, what was going on back in my day was drinking. If we was on an 8-hour flight, I was probably going to drink for 4 or 5 hours and sleep for 2. And I had kind of the crew of guys that I hung around with. I won't mention any names. But, man, that's what I did to pass the time. It didn't matter if we was going, 8 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours. A big part of that time was going to be drinking, and that's just the way it was for me. And if I woke up during the flight, I'd start drinking some more and then go back to sleep. And that's the way that I passed time on those flights. And this is, back in the day before Wi-Fi, all the technology and stuff like that. They were playing movies and shit like that, but man, I don't like to watch movies on airplanes. To me, it's just, I don't know, it's kind of boring. And me and a couple of guys would, end up in 1 or 2 rows together and start shooting the breeze, telling stories, booking the territory, just talking shit. And that was camaraderie. That's what we did back in the day, man. Just hang out and did a lot of drinking. And a lot of guys, that weren't into that. A lot of guys just go to sleep and do things, but that wasn't the way I operated, and you asked me the question. So that's how we passed the time. And I understand that once you get to Saudi Arabia, this is just like when we went to Kuwait that one time many years ago. You can drink on the airplane over there, or you better have your own, because I don't think they had alcohol on the airplane. I did, but I don't think it provided it. And I knew once we got there, there was no alcohol to be found. If you didn't bring it, you weren't going to have it. Although, the one time they asked a bunch of the WWF superstars, they said, hey, man, do you guys want to go scuba diving tomorrow? And so I raised my hand and said, hell yeah, man. And so me, Undertaker, Owen Hart, a bunch of other guys go out there in the middle of nowhere, and there was a case of Heineken beer that somehow magically appeared. And I remember sitting on the front of that boat after we went scuba diving, and nobody trained, none of us. A bunch of idiots out there, a bunch of crazy-ass pro wrestlers out there on a boat. What was it, the Gulf of Kuwait, whatever it was? The instructor was trying to give us a quick 411, but you're talking about guys that have been in the business forever. You're talking about pro wrestlers. Ain't nobody listening to you. Everybody puts on their tank, puts on their mask, puts on their fins, and then goes down. And the instructor says, if you go down to the end of the anchor rope where the anchor is, and we'll meet there. Shit. Ain't nobody listening to that guy. All the boys was swimming around. It was probably about 30 foot of water. It wasn't that deep, but 30 foot of water is plenty deep to drown in. Plenty deep for shit to go wrong in. Everybody's out there swimming around, doing their own thing, and I was down there for quite a while. I got bad ears. All that pressure down there was my ears so bad. I didn't like scuba diving, so I come on back to the top, and I'll never forget. I was sitting on the top of that boat with the Undertaker, leaned up against the windshield of the boat, case of Heineken, and there we were, just sitting there drinking a couple of cold ones, while everybody's out there scuba diving. I just come out, and that was that famous story where Owen Hart didn't know how to deflate that bladder that they had on all of us so he could sink for buoyancy. And Owen Hart had all the scuba diving gear on, and he was basically just swimming circles around the boat because he didn't know how to deflate that bladder. And we kind of got a kick out of that. So anyway, I kind of segued off the answer to the question, but the next question comes from Sean Mauricio, and he goes, hey, Steve, who would you say most influenced your in-ring psychology or your mentor? Man, there was so many guys. Chris Adams, initially, he was the guy that trained me, and he's the guy that taught me that there was a psychology to the business, and that how a heel has to get heat, and how the babyface has to get some back, or, when that babyface needs to win, and riding down the road with Dutch Mantell and Chris Champion. Dutch Mantell on a 200-mile drive will talk from mile 1 to mile 200, and it's all gold, and it's all knowledge, and it's all free. Well, it wasn't free because he was chewing all my chewing tobacco. Dutch Mantell was a huge factor in my psychology. Dr. Tom Pritchard, riding down the road with him, same territory, USWA, same towns every single week. He was the guy that asked me about character development. He said, what's so stunning about stunning Steve Austin? I didn't have an answer for him. Paul Heyman was instrumental in a lot of my psychology. Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, a big part of my psychology. Gorgeous Gary Young, Maniac Matt Bourne, Jimmy Jack Funk, Ricky Steamboat, guys like that. When I got into Blackjack Lanza, George Animal Steel, Jerry Briscoe, man, there was a bunch of people, and I'm leaving so many of them off the list because I can't remember all of them. Bret Hart taught me a lot. So those are guys that I could lean on, but really starting off with Chris Adams because he was the guy that broke me into business. Ted Atwell on Twitter says, would you ever consider making a similar comeback to what Goldberg did? Wrestle a few matches, make a run at the belt one more time? Nah, dude. I love what Goldberg did. I love that he came back. And, that first year run that he had in WWF, WWE, it wasn't that great. I don't know if his heart or his head was in it at the time. He was there, but I don't know, what was going on with him. But on his comeback, that shot, that WrestleMania shot, the match with Brock Lesnar, what a payoff. I mean, what a great match. What a way to, get back into business and show your son, Gage, and share with his wonderful wife, Wanda, for him to be front and center in a big-time spot in the number one promotion in the world. And Bill is a very good friend of mine. So I absolutely loved it. And I really loved it because I got a chance to see him, redefine his relationship with the WWE. And he just went into the Hall of Fame a month or two ago. And so he's come full circle. And that guy started off as a guy who was a football player, got banged up, ends up in the business of pro wrestling, pays his dues down there in WCW, turns into Goldberg, and just got white hot. And he was just the biggest thing that was going in that promotion and in the world, along with myself, the Stone Cold. What a parallel. Two different companies, two guys on top with a very similar look. He wasn't trying to copy me. I wasn't trying to copy him. We were doing two different things, similar in appearance, but Goldberg, the gimmick or character, was different than the Stone Cold character. And to see him come up to New York and then to finish up his run or his career like he did, and who knows what he's going to do next. I thought he kind of hinted at maybe possibly entertaining the thought of doing something in his Hall of Fame speech. And we'll see what happens there. But, I think he was a class act this last go-round. And I enjoyed what he did. But to answer your question, no, I'm not really interested in that. I'm interested in Goldberg doing it. See if he's going to come back. But as far as myself, man, I'm far enough down the road that I don't turn around to look back anymore. I've told people on this podcast plenty of times, man, it took me a long time to get the business out of my system. About 3 years. And I told I drank, I fished, I drank, I fished, and I hunted. And I did a lot of stupid shit, but I got the business out of my system. I still love it. Love it. Like I told you, man, when I came back from that Raw 25, I was so jacked up from adrenaline. It was just off the charts. But, man, the commitment there to, well, and that's the thing, Goldberg had to commit to it. And he had great reason to. He wanted to wrestle for his son and for his wife. If I was going to go back, I wouldn't go back and do it for my wife. I mean, she's not even a wrestling fan. And, her Callie and Moolah, they don't need to see me wrestle. I'm going to leave well enough alone. I left the mark that I did on the business, and I'm happy with the mark that I left on the business. And quite frankly, I always say, man, it's the kids' times now, and it's their time in the ring, and I like to watch them. And Stone Cold had a good run. Could have lasted a little bit longer, but I'm happy with it.
This is the Steve Austin Show.
Dave from Twitter says, did you really eat raw potatoes starting out? Yeah, man, I did. Starved my ass off. Crucial 000YT says, Steve, what do you think of Brock Lesnar using Hardway strikes with his elbows to the head of talents like Randy Orton from SummerSlam and Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 34? Man, I don't know what anybody else thinks about it, but I'll tell you what I think about it. I dig it. I like it. It's brutality. It's real. Could it be considered or construed somewhat dangerous? Anything could be. Swallowing a bite of food could be construed as dangerous, as something could potentially happen from that if it got lodged in your throat. So him using elbow strikes to open someone up could certainly be considered dangerous. So I'm not going to just throw that away and say that, no, there's not a risk that could happen from it. But I dig it, man. But that's the guy in me that loves pro wrestling. That's the guy in me that is competitive. That's the wrestling fan in me that digs blood for a reason, when there's a time for it. And the way that he's going about it in today's world of everything being, a lot more politically correct than the Wild Wild West days of the Attitude Era, and certainly, the mid-early 1980s, the 70s, going back before that. Whenever they started getting color, I'm a fan of that. But, I don't think these days, and don't get me wrong, there's still going to be the occasional blade job, in my opinion. But the way Brock's doing it, and the fact that you don't have to bring up the blade with all the corporate sponsors and stuff like that, it just is what it is. And then it's left unsaid. You've taken care of the business, go on down the road. I dig it. I like blood when it's time for blood. And I'm a Brock Lesnar fan, and he's a dangerous dude. It plays right into his MMA skill set, and he's an absolute beast. And as an effective storytelling tool, I love it. Jay off Twitter says, Steve, since you put out Broken Skull IPA and it did so well, do you plan on creating another beer or maybe any other Stone Cold approved products? You know what? I've been asked that question a lot. I would like to take a swing at another beer. That Broken Skull IPA, for a shoot, is one of the best beers I've ever tasted. It's one of my favorite IPAs. It is my favorite IPA, and it's not just because it's got my name on it. That's how good it is. I'm thinking about another beer right now, and we'll see if that'll happen. As far as more Stone Cold approved products, man, I'm having a good time with my cold steel knives. The Broken Skull knife is awesome. The Working Man's knife is a little bit more cost effective, but both are high quality. Just as far as, my relationship with Kawasaki Motorsports is super, super cool, and really happy to be business partners with them, and I enjoy their products. They're Kawasaki products, but they are Steve Austin approved, and I think they're the best that they are. But as far as beer and other stuff like that, I'm always looking for, an opportunity to do something that fits the lifestyle that I'm in. And definitely I can see adding another beer to the portfolio. And so I'll entertain that here in the very near future. Jay Weaver asks, AC/DC or Sabbath? Dude, two legendary bands, Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, Ronnie James Dio. Dio, one of the greatest voices in the history of rock and roll, passed away. Ozzy, the living legend that he is. I dug Sabbath, but, not as much as AC/DC. Bon Scott, Brian Johnson, Angus Young, Malcolm Young, Phil Rudd, whichever, they had two different drummers. Man, those guys, Chris Jericho says that AC/DC is the greatest rock and roll band of all time. He's probably right. Their music, to me, all that Highway to Hell, Hell's Bell, Shot Down in Flames, TNT. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll, which is a song about the music business, which parallels exactly the path to the pro wrestling business. I'm going to go AC/DC all day long, all day strong. Mr. Rage Cage says, hey, Stone Cold, how hard is it to become a professional wrestler? It's hard as shit. There ain't nothing easy about being a pro wrestler. You can be the best damn athlete in the world. Come from a football background, track background, basketball, baseball, wrestling. Mister, learning to be a pro wrestler is not an easy task. Just the mechanics of it, the psychology of it, the character development part of it. It took me 7.5 years to put all the pieces together. Yeah, I was a pretty good mechanic, even at a year and a half in the business. Psychology needed some work. If I was in there with somebody, I could have a good match. But man, to get to the top, well, just like an AC/DC song, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. And who was that? Was that Hank Jr.? Was that David Allen Coe? If you're big star bound, let me warn you, it's a long, hard ride. The ride. It's a tough-ass business, man. Just getting an opportunity. And especially in 2018, moving into the future, some of the guys that don't really have bodies, I don't know if they'll even get a shot at the business. Look at Dusty Rhodes. One of the greatest of all time. One of the reasons I got in the business was Dusty Rhodes. And if Dusty Rhodes came along in today's business, it's a funny thing, people always ask me, hey man, would Stone Cold Steve Austin get over in today's PG landscape? Well, hell yeah, he would. It's intensity and it's talent. Bottom line, I don't need no cuss words. I would have got over. My ring style was my ring style, and that would go with any damn era that's ever been in the wrestling business. So, but Dusty, just because, first of all, Dusty could work his ass off. Everybody knows that. And he was hands down one of the single best talkers in the history of the business, bar none. The guy was magic on a microphone, and there was just this likability factor to him. You could identify with him 100%. The working man, the blue-collar guy, the American dream. But if you just looked at him from a physicality standpoint, and if you're a body guy, I don't know that Dusty gets a shot. So that's interesting. the question started out being how hard is it to become a professional wrestler, but I segued into something else. But yeah, it's a hard-ass job. It's a great job. The travel on the road is a tremendous grind. Being away from your family is extremely hard. The different things to present themselves in the lifestyle of being on the road can get in the way of a lot of things. So there ain't nothing easy about being a professional wrestler. Your decision-making will affect or influence a lot of that, but it ain't no walk in the park. But it's the best job I ever had, and I guarantee if you asked anybody at any level, whether it's Indies, Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, MLW, WWE, New Japan, All Japan, I don't even know if they're around anymore. Man, it's the best job in the world, and it's an absolute blast. But just to become a professional wrestler is a work in and of itself. To get in the middle, much less to the top, is even harder. Patrick Harper says, Stone Cold, how do you feel about the entire wrestling product now compared to how it was when you had your run? Well, you know what? I touched upon that briefly with Jumpin' Jim Ross on my Tuesday podcast, and I watch the business for what it is these days. I know that everything has changed. Everything's evolved or just kind of gotten a little bit faster. So I watch it for what it is, and I enjoy it for what it is. And as long as they can give me good stories that I can suspend my disbelief, I want to watch as a fan. I don't want to watch as a grizzled veteran. I guess I did that for a couple of years. I'm done doing that now, and I watch as a fan. And it's fun when you can watch, the WWE superstars or someone that you know in the business just absolutely go out there and rip it up. And you can send them a direct message or a text message and say, man, lights out match, that was awesome. It's a pretty cool thing to do. So the business is what it is in today's day and age. In 2018, as I record this podcast, my time ended in 2003. So many things have changed. Many years have gone by, but I still dig it. And I don't really try to compare the two because, like Jim and I were saying on Tuesday, it's not really fair to. So I enjoy it, to answer your question. Man, here we go. We got a question about the Broken Skull Ranch and some deer from John Hermanson. He goes, hey, Steve, I was just wondering, when you were strengthening your herd at the Broken Skull Ranch, you said you guys were using all native deer. Were they deer that you just had to bring in, or did you rebound the ranch just based off the selective harvest? We brought in over the course of 10 years, we brought in 20 bred does, 10 1 year and 10 about 2 years later from two very well-known ranches in the South Texas area close to the border that had outstanding native South Texas genetics. There were no scientific deer, no northern strains, no Kansas strains, no nothing. And that was letting the deer grow, taking out the cull deer. And man, it took a long time to do it. And I had someone out there that was working against me, it turns out, and they got the boot. But it was patience, and you let the deer that you want to keep breeding walk. And there's, you're in it for the long haul, so it takes a commitment. And we were committed to the task at hand. We fed protein 24/7, 365, and we let that herd grow old. I ain't got no breeder pens, no DMV pens. I'm not into that. If you are, more power to you. But we did it, and we had a good time doing it. And that's the bottom line. Rim Mo says, hey, Steve, you're being executed and you get one final meal. What would it be, and who would you eat it with? Well, hopefully I'm never going to be executed. But I answered this question in my book, Stone Cold Truth, many years ago. My final meal would be Mexican food, which is my favorite food in the world. Steak is up there as well, and Cajun food is right in there to round out my top three, but Mexican food is my favorite food. I get the same thing I get every single time. I get 3 beef enchiladas. This is ground beef now. 3 ground beef enchiladas, 3 ground beef crispy tacos. I might have a side of refried beans. Before that, I would have had some chips and salsa and maybe some queso dip, that orange kind, not the white kind. But yeah, that's my final meal. And who I would eat it with? Well, if I have to go, I got to eat it with my illustrious wife, Kristen, Callie, and Moolah. And then I guess it would check me out. But Nick Carter says, Steve, did you prefer working in a classic cage with the big bars or the newer style chain link? I always preferred the old school one. I tell you what, when you ask me what cage I worked in or what cage I preferred to work in, dude, I got to go classic cage, big bars, because that's what I was working with. That's what I was working in with Vince McMahon at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in Memphis, Tennessee at the Pyramid. And the reason I love that, because if you go back to the Hell in a Cell match that I've already referred to in this podcast, where Mick Foley worked with The Undertaker, they were working, with that new school type of, hurricane fencing, when Mick went through that thing and went over the top. And that cage worked perfectly for those guys for what they needed to do or what they were trying to do or things that they weren't even trying to do. That big blue cage or that old school cage wouldn't have worked for them. But for Vince and I, when I was trying to get in that ring and he wouldn't let me, and then when we scaled up the side of that cage, and he took that bump off up to that announce table, and then I grabbed the horn, made an announcement, and then I walked up those ropes and just overemphasized the body language and climbed up that cage. Dude, that's what that cage was made for. That thing was made to take those kind of bumps off, to hang off those kind of bumps, and climb up and showboat off of. And of course, later on down the road, 15 minutes, 20 minutes into the match, Big Show comes out from underneath that damn tarp, underneath the mat, picks me up like a rag doll and just shucks me right through that damn steel cage. It swings open by the force of the impact that he threw me at. That Big Stro is the strongest son of a bitch. Jesus Christ, that guy's strong. He threw me like a rag doll. I tumbled off, got myself into the Royal Rumble, I guess. But that match, for that match in that cage, and just, I like, to answer your question, the big bars, dude, hands down. Bernard Hartlove says, countless wrestlers, including yourself, have come back from devastating injuries/surgeries. What goes through your mind that first time you cleared to wrestle and step into the squared circle that first time after serious injury/surgery? There's a lot of things going through your mind at a time like that. Usually, you're going to be okay with the bumps because you've probably already taken some bumps, to get yourself back in ring condition before you go out there in front of 15, 20, or in a big arena like a WrestleMania, 70,000 fans. So you're probably pretty good with the physicality of everything, especially being if you're going to have a standard match, no crazy bumps, and you've been cleared to return. You've already taken some practice bumps and worked some house shows and stuff like that. But I'll never forget when I talked to Ric Flair, when he came back from that broken back in that plane crash. Holy smokes, he was scared to take a back drop. He was scared to get tossed off that top turnbuckle. He was scared to death. And that's from Ric Flair, the greatest of all time. And for me, when I came back from my surgery, even before my surgery, when I came back from the injury itself, I was working 6-mans, tags, instructed not to bump. I was pretty nervous because I didn't know what was going to happen. But the biggest thing you really worry about once you get past that is, are the fans going to accept you back? All of a sudden you've had this forward momentum. All of a sudden you go on the shelf for 3 or 4 months, much less a year to 15 months. Then you come back, and can you continue the momentum that you had before you left? Are you in the same place in their minds and in their hearts when you left? Will they still be behind your cause? Will they still believe in you, or will they still hate you? Will they still love you? All those things really came into play for me more so than, was I going to be okay, by hitting the mat? But it's a mind trip, and it can, it can mess you up, and it can take a while for you to get back on track. That's for damn sure. Evil Ken on Twitter says, Steve, why did you rarely, if ever, wear the WWF title belt? To be consistent with nonconformity aspect of Stone Cold Steve Austin, because you wore all your titles in WCW. That was something that I didn't think about. When I was stunning Steve Austin and I was a world television champion, or the tag team champions with Flying Brian. I always wore those belts. And I guess it was because that's what you did back then. And with Brian, we were using the camera signals and all the other stuff and messing with people. I had a Polaroid camera I was out there with sometimes. So we were using our hands. So we needed to have the belts around our waist so we could do all the other bullshit with our hands. And, I never thought about it. So that's a really interesting question. But when I got the title, whatever title it was, that Intercontinental title was first, and then the world title, the deal was, the way I felt, it wasn't something I consciously thought about. I just knew that I wasn't a belt-wearing guy. I was going to carry that summits down there, and, with the attitude and the swagger that I had, and it just seemed like it fit for what the character, should do. I guess. It's a damn good question. Because I never, ever, I don't think, if you can give me a match on television or a match, well, you know what? I think I wore that $1 million belt a time or two. That thing was such a hunk of shit. I mean, this is all due respect to the belt and what it meant. And Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, is the one who got that belt over. What I mean is that belt was held together with these little circular gimmicks, kind of like a keychain. And holy smokes, transporting that thing around, and Ted can attest to this, those dollar signs would fall off that thing, and, it was just very, very awkward. It'd fall apart. Going back to the Titus O'Neal thing, man, you'd go to step between the ropes with that thing on, and it would fall right off of your waist, and you'd look like an idiot because, there's your belt laying on the ground, and you're supposed to be the $1 million champion, and shit like that ain't supposed to happen to the $1 million champion because it's a $1 million belt. Yeah, not so fast, my friend. No, man, Stone Cold was a guy, carried that belt, and did it with swagger, and interesting question, dude. I never really thought about it. Appreciate it, Evil Ken. Lee on Twitter says, Steve, how do wrestlers feel about their peers who ignore or assholes to fans when they're off the clock? Some wrestlers are great. Some are jerks to fans when they're approached. Is there a code amongst wrestlers? Man, that question's all over the charts as far as the answers that I could give you. Sometimes, man, when you're having one of those dog day afternoons and got family problems at the house, you've been on the road long, you ain't getting the push you think you deserve, you're injured, you're banged up, you're dinged up, income tax, IRS was looking for you, all kinds of things can go wrong. And sometimes, you just get in a zone where you're tired, you just don't want to be jacked with. So code amongst the wrestlers is, if there is a guy or if there is a gal that's having a bad day and they are being an asshole to the fans, you don't want to be around them. So you stay away from them because you don't want that shit to rub off on you. But also, there are checks and balances. When we were there, or, like if someone was having a rough day or some of these new kids came in, all of a sudden they got a little TV time and they'd start blowing up the rental car places and stuff like that. You pull them aside and say, hey, man, you need to chill the F out because, you're part of us. So you're repping us. So you need to cut that shit out. I don't care how long you've been on TV, but if you got a problem, you need to dress in a little quieter fashion. But, man, everybody has their own unique relationship with the fans. Man, I was always down with, and I still am, pretty much 24/7 access. But sometimes, man, it just ain't the right time. And sometimes, not everybody's having a great day. There ain't no real code, but, man, you want to treat people good so they keep coming back to the shows. And heels. Now, if a heel wants to go through a damn airport or whatever and not sign a damn thing, I can get that. Even in today's landscape. But there's a way to do that without being rude or arrogant to the fans. Kenny Bula says to me, Steve, 2 questions. What's the best hangover food? I don't know that there is a best hangover food. Then he says, would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? Man, after thinking about that question for 15 seconds, I'm going to fight the 1 horse-sized duck. Because you got to look at it this way. If you got 100 duck-sized horses, strength in numbers, those horses are only the size of a duck, but there's 100 of them. They could corral you. They could stampede you. Yeah, the little bastards are only as big as a duck, but there's 100 of them. So they come at you from all directions, gang up on you, dog pile you, in this case, horse pile you, and there's 100 of them. And you look at that one horse-sized duck. Now, that's a big-ass duck. Here's the thing. The duck doesn't have very long legs. And if it's a horse-sized duck, he's going to be at just the proper height for me to kick that summit right in the drum, grab his neck, put it on his shoulders, and drop it on that stack of dimes he calls a neck, and put him out. If you look at the little 100 duck-sized horses, they got strength in numbers, and also there's almost no way, it's almost an impossibility, unless I'm doing DDP yoga, to be able to kick those little duck-sized horses in the gut and get that far down to give them a stone cold stunner. So the stunner's almost basically ineffective against the 100 duck-sized horses. So I'm going the horse-sized duck all day long. He's going to be in harm's way, perfect position for the stone cold stunner. And 100 duck-sized horses, I'm going to leave them alone. We'll put out some hay for them. Gordy Smith says, "Hey, Steve, you always talk about your poor hearing. Just curious, have you ever done or tried to do anything about it?" I entertained the thoughts of getting some hearing aids a long time ago. And maybe one of these days I will. Here's the way I got it figured. I'm not in a match. I'm not in the wrestling business. So nobody's going to be calling me any high spots. And if I was in a match, I'd be calling the high spots anyway. So we can eliminate that factor. I'm not listening to shit. If I can't hear my music, I just turn it up louder. Also, if I got a set of hearing aids, then I would hear more of the jobs that my wife wants me to do. And I couldn't be able to say, well, I didn't hear you. So then I wouldn't be able to use that as my excuse. Poor hearing gets me out of a lot of damn work from my illustrious wife, Kristen. So no, in a serious note, no, I ain't really done nothing to mess with it. I can still hear pretty damn good. I mean, not really, but I can hear good enough to hear what I think I need to hear. So I'm going to leave my hearing as it is. And when it comes time to get the hearing aids in a couple of years, then, and only then, will I get me some hearing aids. Here's a wrestling question. It comes from Brian Burke. "Steve, I've always wondered what it's like to be on the receiving end of what Gorilla Monsoon would call a reverse knife-edge chop. For example, a flare chop. Are they as painful as they look and sound? Did you ever ask a guy to lighten up or refuse to take them?" Boy, I'll tell you something about those chops. I was never a big chop guy. I threw a few chops back in my day because, for a time it seemed like they were the thing to do. And, Flair kind of had that, he was expert at that. And Ricky Steamboat, Steamboat's chops were easy. But back in the day when I was working with Flying Brian Pillman, man, he loved to chop. And Brian could chop your ass off. Holy smokes, that dude could chop hard. We were working a loop down there in Florida. I guess it might have been in Jacksonville one night. And I was kind of turning my body to try to save my chest from those chops. And Brian called my ass out on it after the match. He goes, "Steve," he goes, "if you don't want to take those chops, just tell me, because you're turning and they're not getting the effect they need. So we're just going to eliminate them if you don't want to take them." And I said, man, that's a pretty strong statement. But he was right. They weren't effective. They weren't making the same sound. And when he called me out on that, from then on, dude, I took them straight on. Just lay them in, I'll take them. And then, but I'll never forget Brian for calling me out for that. And I loved him for it. And it was what it was. And then, by the same token, I would chop his ass back. One time in USWA, we was in a battle royal in some town. I can't remember. USWA was a weekly territory. And the one and only Danny Davis, he was another guy who was instrumental in my psychology, who I didn't name a while ago in that earlier question. Danny Davis was very generous to me. Taught me a lot. One time, I'll never forget, we was in a battle royal, and I chopped Danny 3 times. Pow, pow, pow. I said, "Spin me around and chop me." Well, Danny spun me around, and he started chopping the shit out of me. God dang, I had blood dripping down my chest, and I left him a note. I said, "F you," and your chops. And when he came back from the match, he saw that note and looked over at me, and we both started laughing our ass off. But, yeah, man, them chops were a bitch. Flair, he would throw – Flair had those big meaty hands. Flair's chops sounded great, but they didn't hurt as bad as most people's chops hurt. Now, back in the day, if you go back and watch this old match, I can't remember the tag match. I believe it was Dusty Rhodes and a Man's with the Hands of Stone, Ron Garvin, against Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. It was a television taping. And Flair and Garvin were chopping the shit out of each other. And I think both guys had drawn blood from each other. And Garvin did have the hands of stones. And both guys were bleeding, particularly Rick. And he rolled out of that cage one time on a powder. And, it was just flat out awesome. Garvin could chop the shit out of you. I never was big on the chops. Like I said, I've chopped my share of guys, but it wasn't my thing to do. But if you can find that match, and that's when Dusty just lights everybody up when he kisses Baby Doll and then kisses Man with the Hands of Stone. I've talked about that match in the past on the podcast. But anyway, I dig it. Hey, Steve, been listening to your podcast since day one. Thanks for the years in wrestling and delivering podcast gold. My question is, what does it truly mean to be over in the wrestling business? Reason I ask is because I listen to Vince Russo as well, and he usually criticizes that today's WWE talents are not over with the exception of Cena and Brock. I just wanted to hear from someone who drew money and arguably the greatest WWE superstar of all time. Thanks, Victor from San Jose, California. Let's just stick with the first question because, speculation or anybody's opinions, you asked mine, so here's mine. My question is, what does it truly mean to be over in the wrestling business? There's simply different levels to simplify it to you as best I can. You know you're over when you're over, I mean super over, when you're ringing the cash register. You listen to the different levels of pops. Those pops are what they are. They're an indicator or a gauge. And do the pops apply just from being in the arena? And do they transfer over to the box office? And that's the difference. There's a lot of guys that are somewhat over. There's very few that are really over. And there's even fewer that are truly over with context to the business. That's my opinion on that. There's just different levels of it, man. But everybody knows who's over in that damn locker room. And that's the bottom line. Steve, what's the best piece of advice you received during your wrestling career? Thanks. It comes from Katie over in Liverpool, England. Best piece of advice I ever received. Best piece of advice I ever received during the wrestling career. So many just little tidbits of it from Skandar Akbar and Bronco Lubitsch. Kid, save your money. From veterans, slow down. From other veterans, you only got so many bumps on your bump card. From somebody else, pay your taxes. Work on your character. Work on your promos. Let a cooler head prevail. From Big Van Vader in my WCW tenure. Man, there's a million of them. Nothing that I can tell you that are going to change your life. Everything in moderation. A lot of veterans and a lot of guys taught me a lot of shit, and I was able to apply a lot of it to the business of pro wrestling. But, that's saving your money and learning about the business and learning psychology and slowing down were, I think, three of them, a couple of the most important things that anybody taught me. And that's coming from a mentorship and, really teaching you what you need to know, the basics about the business. You can get all the fancy dance psychology stuff and learn about the character stuff, but bottom line is you got to save your money, you got to take care of your body, and you got to take care of your opponent's body. Hey, Steve, being a big fan of World Class Championship Wrestling Dallas, what was your favorite feud and match? And also, what made Gary Hart so effective as a manager and a booker? Nick Mills over in Glasgow, Scotland. I love calling Glasgow because I think it's actually pronounced Glasgow. my favorite feud had to be the Freebirds versus the Von Erichs. God dang, the Freebirds came in there and they were just, well, first they came in as baby faces and they were, frickin' frank with the Von Erichs, and they turned heel. And oh man, Michael Hayes talking all that shit, and Buddy Roberts getting all that heat, and the bully, the big bad Terry Gordy, just flat out awesome. And those Von Erichs were rock stars. The Von Erichs were as over as anybody I've ever seen in my life, and especially in Dallas, Texas, in that territory, worldwide even. That was probably my favorite feud coming out of that territory. Also, don't get me wrong, I mean, Gino Hernandez and Chris Adams and all that stuff that they were doing, losing their hair, that was phenomenal stuff. There's a lot of good stuff there, but just the Von Erichs versus the Freebirds, because I was before I got into business, before I really knew what the business was all about, and I dug it. And Gary Hart was effective as a manager and a booker because he was a super smart guy. He had a mind for the business, and as a manager, his promos, his delivery, the way he presented talent was just like talking to the head, like talking to a head coach of a football team. He spoke with knowledge, power, conviction, reality. It was a shoot, and he was menacing. He wasn't trying to be scary. Well, he was, but he wasn't over trying, and he was credible. You believed what he said he was going to do or what his talent was going to do. And, having the book, these things were able to happen. But anyway, yeah, Gary Hart, god dang, man, I wanted to call that guy so bad, and then wanted to reach out and talk to him right before, he died, and I never did, and I never got a chance to talk to him again. But when I was in Dallas, Texas, getting my start, Gary Hart said, hey, man, why don't you guys come over here and work for my promotion? We were working at the Metroplex Arena in Dallas, Texas, and he put me and Rod Price together, and we became the, whatever the federation was called, tag team champions. That was the first belt I ever held in the business of professional wrestling, was from Gary Hart. And I can't believe that he believed in us to give us those damn belts, but nonetheless, it was quite an honor to work for Gary back in the day, and I wish he was around, these days to talk and learn some more stuff from. But anyway, Gary Hart was just a smart mind and a straight shooter and a serious guy. He loved to have his fun, but he commanded your respect, and that was whether you were inside or outside of the business, and that's the bottom line. And I am going to continue to answer these questions on another podcast, but I'm going to stop answering them right now, and I'm going to come back and do my close, and I'm going to save the rest of these questions for another podcast when I need another ace in the hole. For everybody that's sending these questions, I appreciate it. I'm about to spin up and get ready for my project tomorrow. Thank you for the questions. I'm coming back right now to close the show. All right, everybody, give me the go-home cue. It's time to wrap up this podcast and ride off in the sunset. But before I do that, I want to thank everybody for sending me your questions at my email and at my Twitter account, at Steve Austin BSR. Appreciate it very much. Questions that I did not get to, I will answer on another Q&A session when I need another podcast. I'm looking forward to having some more people over at 317 Gimmick Street. Been a little bit of hustle and bustle on my end, trying to get some projects taken care of and taking care of a few irons that we've had in the fire for quite some times, and shit hit the fan kind of all at one time. So thank you for bearing with me, and thank you for sending in your questions. Hey man, ProWrestlingTees.com/Steve Austin has all my Broken Skull Ranch shirts, and I got a damn good beer. It's called Steve Austin's Broken Skull IPA, and you can find it at Whole Foods and Total Wines if you live in California. If you don't live in Cali, check out InsideTheCellar.com and see if they ship to your state. Folks, I got two badass pocket knives that I think is two of the best knives out on the market right now, and everybody needs a knife. So if you don't get one of mine, go get one of somebody's, but you need a damn knife. Check out the Cold Steel Broken Skull knife or the Cold Steel Working Man's knife at my new Amazon store. Amazon has the best price on both knives. Just go to Amazon.com/shop/Steve Austin. And I want to say one more time, thank you to all the fine sponsors of the Steve Austin Show. That's how I'm able to do this podcast for you twice a week for free. And you can find all my sponsors at PodcastOne.com. Just click on the Killer Deals button at the top of the page and then click on the Steve Austin Show banner. Folks, until next time, my name is Steve Austin, and I will catch your ass down the road.
This has been a Podcast One production. Download new episodes of The Steve Austin Show every Tuesday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.
Pluto TV has thousands of free movies and TV shows.
We're coming at you with everything we got.
This is the mindset.
Free.
This is the mantra.
Free.
This is the mindset.
With movies like Pineapple Express, the entire Star Trek film franchise, and Gladiator, and TV shows like Survivor, SpongeBob SquarePants, The Fairly Odd Parents, and Ghosts, Pluto TV is always free. Huzzah! Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.